What's going on, everybody? What is going on, the Catch fam? My name is John Dawson, and in today's video we are continuing my series of our early 2022 fantasy football rankings for the quarterback position. Today's video will finish out the series with our fourth video overall. We'll be going over quarterbacks numbers 16 through 20. In today's video, quarterbacks 1 through 15 will all be linked down below, as well as our current wide receiver rankings heading into the 2022 fantasy football season. If you do enjoy today's content, be sure to hit that like button down below. If you're new to the channel, of course, hit that subscribe button. Come join the Catch family on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and feel free to drop any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2022 fantasy football season down below. Without further ado, let's hop right into today's video. All right, number 16 overall, we've got my guy Tua Time, who, if you followed the channel last offseason, you guys know I was a huge fan of Tua going into 2021. I loved him as a dark horse candidate to really break out and be a quarterback who would have that nice rushing upside, but really just another year of struggles for Tua in 2021. Just didn't feel like he was really clicking in the offense overall when he was on the field. Only played 13 games last season. Through those 13 games, 388 passing attempts, 263 completions, just over 2,600 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, only 128 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So I'm really hoping that this year, with a new coaching change as well as a revamped offense, adding Tyreek Hill to this offense, that chemistry with Jalen Waddle should continue in 2022. Of course, the running back depth is just absolutely crazy. Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, and feels like 10 other running backs that didn't even list. You got Ced Wilson as a wide receiver 3 who's got some really nice big play capability as well. I almost wish Devontae Parker stayed with the Dolphins and was not traded, because then I would just absolutely love this receiving core. But nonetheless, I think it's very good overall. And don't forget about my guy Mike Gesicki at the tight end position, basically a receiver who lines up at tight end. So I do think that the pieces are there for the Dolphins overall, and for Tua most importantly to be successful. Like a lot of people have said in the offseason, this is a make it or break it season for Tua, and I do think that he offers some nice upside as well as some high risk, low reward type profile heading into 2022. So I'll put him number 16 overall because, like I said, when healthy and in the right offensive fit, I do think he could offer some nice rushing upside as well. I'm not going to be as high on Tua heading into 2022 like I was last season, but I'll still easily put him in the top 20. He does come in at a nice ADP of 131 through the Sleeper app at the moment. I know that a lot of fantasy managers out there right now are willing to take the risk on Tua in some of those later rounds, and I like that idea. I think that overall I'm comfortable putting him at number 16 overall because I think he offers just a little bit more upside than the players that you do see finishing out the top 20 list today. And on top of that, I think this offense as a whole is in a really good position in comparison to some of these other offenses. So I've got Tua as my QB 16 and my early quarterback rankings heading into the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, number 17 overall, we've got Carson Wentz, guys. And I get it. Carson Wentz gets a ton of hate from a fantasy perspective, but just hear me out for a second. This was your QB 14 last season. Overall, 516 passing attempts, 322 completions, just over 3,500 passing yards, 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Truthfully, not that bad. Had 215 rushing yards and a rushing score as well. Overall, 8 fumbles and 5 fumbles lost. So the turnovers are still an issue, but realistically, in terms of passing, his year really wasn't that bad. And I get it, Carson Wentz makes some really crazy decisions on the field, and they really look bad when you go back and watch them. I totally get it, guys, and I know why there's a lot of hesitancy around Carson Wentz. Obviously, only 1 year with the Colts, and now is a part of the Washington Commanders, so a little bit of a change of scenery. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that the Washington Commanders are anywhere close to what the Indianapolis Colts were last season. Obviously, the Colts had an extremely strong running game, an extremely good defense, and a true wide receiver in Michael Pittman. But outside of that, there really wasn't anything else on that roster. Zach Pascal had some flashes early in the season, but overall, there wasn't a lot for Carson Wentz to work with, although he really didn't need to because the strength of that team was running the football and playing defense. When we look at the Washington Commanders going into the 2022 fantasy football season, man, I think that defense is abysmal. There's some nice pieces up front, but that secondary was just god awful last season. The run game isn't awful by any means. You've got a lot of running backs in this running back room, and it's no disrespect to Antonio Gibson or JD McKissick or any of the young guys that they drafted last season or this season, but overall the run game is not what Jonathan Taylor and the Colts were doing last season by any means. But you do have a true wide receiver one at the moment, unless anything changes in the offseason with Terry McLaurin. I really think that Carson Wentz and Terry McLaurin are going to be able to be a nice pair, and then you add Jahan Dotson in the draft as well. So there are some good receiving options for Carson Wentz, and if Logan Thomas can stay healthy, he's a very, very reliable tight end one as well. So there are some nice pieces here. Obviously, the defense is going to be doing Carson Wentz a lot of favors, but I do think that he could easily replicate what he did last season and still put together a top 15 season at the quarterback position. So I don't think having him at number 17 by any means is outlandish. I get it. He gets a lot of hate for different reasons, especially the turnovers and some of those crazy plays, injuries, all kinds of things. I totally get it, but at the end of the day, we have to look at what he did statistically last season through 17 games, and he really did not have that bad of a year, especially through the air. So I'm completely comfortable putting him at number 17 overall moving in to the 2022 fantasy football season. At number 18, we've got Matty Ice Matt Ryan with a change of scenery. We just talked about Carson Wentz moving from the Colts to the Commanders, and now we've got Matt Ryan moving from the Falcons to the Colts. So I love this change of scenery for Matt Ryan. This was your QB 20 in fantasy football in 2021, just under 4,000 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. He did have 11 fumbles last season, 4 fumbles lost, which are relatively concerning numbers, but don't forget how bad that Atlanta offensive line was. He did have 82 rushing yards and 1 touchdown for what it's worth on the ground as well. Overall, I just don't think that all the fuel is out of the tank quite yet for Matt Ryan. We know how good of a passer he can be, and I do think that there are a lot of favorable pieces for Matt Ryan heading into 2022 with that big change of scenery. Of course, I love the running game for the Colts. Obviously, we all do from a fantasy perspective, led by JT, but the offensive line is very good as well. You've got Naheem Hines as a check down option through the passing game, and Phillip Lindsay signed in the offseason a nice RB3. The wide receiver position, which we kind of just touched on when we were talking about Carson Wentz, is relatively thin, don't get me wrong, but Michael Pittman, a true wide receiver one. I think that him and Matt Ryan are really going to flourish with one another. I love the addition of Alec Pierce in the draft to this offense as well. I think he's going to be a nice slot PPR style type receiver. You still got Paris Campbell hanging around. I mean, I don't know. There are some other guys on that depth chart who could potentially step up. At the end of the day, like Carson Wentz did last season, we're going to be looking at a true running game for the Colts, a true defense as well. I think this defense is going to be one of the best in the league. Next season, I think they're being absolutely slept on. I think those things are really going to allow Matt Ryan to play on a good level all season long. I don't think you get a ton of upside whatsoever with Matt Ryan, but like I said, top 20 last season. We didn't mention the tight ends as well. You got Mo Alley Cox, and then you go out and you draft 2 tight ends as well. So there's some help through the passing and the blocking game at the tight end position as well. I don't know. Listen, guys, I think that he's very comfortable for me being in the top 20 overall. Like I said, not a ton of upside. I don't think this is going to be a breakout year, even with him moving from the Falcons to the Colts, but I do think we need to show him some respect. And I think that having him in the top 20 moving into 2022 at 18 overall is not unreasonable whatsoever. All right, number 19 overall, we got Jameis Winston, who's really becoming one of those dark horse late round picks at the quarterback position. And listen, at the end of the day, man, I'm not crazy about Winston. Obviously, we haven't seen him play in a full season in quite some time. Obviously got hurt last season, which, you know, he was playing relatively good football before he did get injured. Through 7 games, had 161 passing attempts, 95 completions, just over 1,100 passing yards, 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Not bad numbers. Added 166 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown and just 2 fumbles through those games. Only one of them lost. So he was playing pretty good, and he seemed to have good chemistry within this offense. But the reason that I like Jameis Winston within the top 20, and I also do like him as a late round draft selection at this point in the offseason, and you've obviously got Kamara and Ingram leading the running back room. So the running back room is going to be completely capable, even if Kamara misses some time. But this receiving room is just absolutely loaded on paper at the moment. Obviously, Michael Thomas should be able to come back and play as a true wide receiver one for this offense. You add Jarvis Landry in the offseason, then you go out and you draft Chris Olave. That alone is a killer receiving room that a lot of not just fantasy fans, but NFL fans in general are looking forward to watching in 2022. But think about some of these other guys like Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway and Deontay Harris, who have shown a lot of big play capability and just good overall play at the receiver position. Those guys were putting up some pretty decent stat lines last season, even when Jameis Winston wasn't playing. I still have some faith personally in Adam Trautman at the tight end position. Then we got Taysom Hill floating around as well. Lots of rumors around that Taysom Hill is going to line up as a tight end and still be used like that Swiss Army knife type player that he is. So I'm excited about that too. They also kind of revamped and bolstered up this offensive line in the offseason, and this defense looks very good on paper as well. So I think that'll help out Winston. So I actually like the Saints in general as kind of a sleeper team, and I like Winston within the top 20. I do think he's going to be able to put up a productive season as a whole moving into 2022. All right, number 20 overall to end the list, I've got Ryan Tannehill, who I feel like a lot of fantasy managers have forgotten about heading into 2022. And I get it. Titans went out and they selected Malik Willis in the 2022 NFL draft, which is spooking a lot of fantasy managers. But me personally, I feel like Tannehill is going to play a majority of the season, if not the entire season. They're going to allow Malik Willis to have some time to sit back, to learn, and to really mature and to grow into that quarterback one position, which is really what a lot of NFL scouts said that Malik Willis would need nonetheless. And at the end of the day, I know that Tannehill has come out and said that it's not his job to be Malik Willis's mentor. But regardless, I think that Ryan Tannehill is a perfect quarterback to sit behind and to watch play and to help a young quarterback develop. So I really think that the Titans are going to allow Tannehill to continue to play as the primary QB, especially when the Titans have been in the playoff mix and one of the best teams in terms of winning records in the last 2 seasons in the AFC as well. When you look at this team overall, obviously you've got one of the best running attacks in the entire league, led by Derrick Henry. Nothing else to say there. The receiving room, obviously a little bit different, which I also think is spooking a lot of fantasy managers. You lose that big play capability from A.J. Brown. But guys, you have to think about how many games A.J. Brown has missed over the last 2 seasons or so. I mean, he really has only been on the field for a certain percentage of time. So I get it. It's definitely a loss. I don't disagree with that. But at the end of the day, you replace him with Treylon Burks, who, once again, I think is also spooking managers out of Ryan Tannehill overall, because Treylon Burks has had so many things popping up throughout the offseason since the draft in terms of conditioning, asthma, not being able to practice. But I think by the time the regular season starts, those things will smooth themselves out, and Treylon Burks will be able to be a dynamic playmaker on the field. And I love the addition of Robert Woods to this offense. I think he's going to be a very nice security blanket for Ryan Tannehill. And I think the addition of Austin Hooper as a tight end one will also help this offense. And don't forget, guys like Westbrook stepped up last season in place of A.J. Brown. So I do think that there are some other receivers on this roster who'll be able to step up and at least be serviceable. So overall, don't get me wrong, I'm not completely bullish on this offense from a passing standpoint. Obviously, they're going to be a run first smash mouth type of football team that's going to also rely on the defense to some degree. But I still think that Tannehill, who came in as QB 12 last season overall, I mean, guys, top 12 fantasy quarterback last season, who's being completely disregarded heading into 2022. 531 passing attempts, 357 completions, 3,700 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, so 14 interceptions. Not a great ratio there, but he did have 270 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. So he actually had pretty decent numbers on the ground as well. So just don't forget, this was a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Like I said, I think a lot of the concerns for fantasy managers between Malik Willis and Treylon Burks, the loss of A.J. Brown, all those things, I think that they're definitely concerning, but I don't think that there's any reason to keep Tannehill out of the top 20 moving into the 2022 fantasy football season. And that'll do it for today's video, as well as our early rankings for the quarterback position moving into the 2022 fantasy football season. Let me know in the comments down below what quarterbacks were missing from the rankings overall. There are plenty quarterbacks from that sophomore class that I don't have included in my top 20. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. You've also got guys like Daniel Jones outside of the top 20 as well, who some fantasy managers are willing to take a risk on, as well as Jared Goff. So let me know in the comments down below who was missing from the top 20 overall that you believe. And I do think that there's some nice upside presented in some of those sophomore quarterbacks. But overall, I like some of the guys who have more concrete statistics, who I know maybe don't offer as much upside, but at least can get the job done, especially guys like Carson Wentz and Ryan Tannehill, who finished in the top 15 last season. If you did enjoy today's content, be sure to hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Come join the Catch fam. We put out free fantasy content on a daily basis, and right now we are running a free subscriber mock draft almost every single day of the week. Make sure to join our Discord to get updates on when we are drafting, and be sure to check out all of our other links down below as well. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening, and remember, you saw it here on the Catch.